All right, perfect. There we go. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And for those that might join ongoing here, obviously just tick past 2 o'clock. My name is Jason Scott. So as a brief introduction, I work alongside Taj Richardson here for the Harcourts Lincoln City office in the Oregon coast with regards to specifically the auction process, which is a method of sale and an alternative strategy that we often use within our brokerage. And my role within the company is to help navigate that particular process. I work with the agent in running and facilitating ultimately an auction campaign. And today I want to share with you a little bit of detail around that auction process and around our company as well, purely for the sake of giving you the information so that you're aware of what that actually means, in giving you that information for you to be able to understand the process when working with potential buyers, in representing them. We want to obviously welcome you and encourage you to interact not only with our process, but of course, with Taj's wonderful properties on behalf of our sellers. Our job here, of course, just like yours, is to help stitch a deal together, to help our sellers get a great price, to help your buyers, of course, get a wonderful home. And so we're simply here to facilitate that. And all auction is an alternative strategy or an alternative approach to the market itself. And so I will share some of that with you today. I also really want to encourage, if anyone has any specific questions throughout today's conversation, please shout them out, interrupt, say hello, or simply write a message in the chat as well, whether that's directly, if you wanted to keep that question anonymous, or whether that was open to everyone. Again, we really welcome the opportunity to answer any inquisitions that you might have. Firstly, you would have noticed by now that I have a funny Australian accent, and I apologize up front for that, very much so. I know it puts me at a huge disadvantage sometimes. Thank you, Sandra. But Taj is a professional translator, so if you did need any help, if I say something funny, interrupt me and just let me know, of course. But our company, being Harcourts Real Estate, actually originated in Australasia. We started in New Zealand in 1888 in Wellington, which is the capital city of New Zealand. We then moved to Australia in 1996, and we came over to the United States in about 2012. So we're approaching that sort of 11th year. And from 2014 onward, we've been running, as part of our business offering, a non-distressed auction process. Now, in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Fiji, many other places, the auction method of sale is a very, very prevalent method of sale when it comes to real estate, both with regard to residential real estate, with regard to commercial, agricultural. And we saw a huge opportunity as a brand to come over to the United States, specifically, though we are now operating in Canada and Mexico as well, in providing an auction alternative. In Australia and New Zealand, there are 5 or 6 different methods of sale, different ways of which a seller can interact with an agent in order to position their property on the market. Whereas in the United States, there is really but one, which is the traditional or standard sales method, in that we come up with a listing price, rightly or wrongly, with regard to the specificity of that price, and then we syndicate on the MLS and hope that the market obviously responds well. And there are a number of different strategies traditionally, of course, that we can do this. In San Francisco, for example, it's very common for those listing prices to be slightly below market. It's been arguably one of the hottest real estate markets in the last decade or more. And as a result of that, they hope to increase their response rate in order to negotiate multiple offers at or possibly over that asking price. That would all be familiar with you over the pandemic market, where that was very, very commonplace, of course. And that's normal practice in San Francisco. It was normal for all of us traditionally through the COVID market and some of the heights of the market there. The other strategy traditionally, which is more common in a more normal or balanced market or in a buyer's market, which is whereby we come up with a listing price that might be slightly higher than where market or market value might see the property's price point. And that inflation might be because of the seller's ambition on price. It might be a suggestion of the agent with regards to negotiations. Because ultimately, traditionally, if we list at a slightly higher price, we get interest below that price. We send counter offers, of course, and hopefully get to a price point. But what listing the property slightly high does is it restricts the amount of interest that comes through a property. And sometimes restricted interest can be the best buyers for the property. To speak personally, I purchased a home just before the COVID pandemic, and myself and my wife and our, at the time, very, very newborn son, we were looking to purchase a property for roughly $600,000 to $650,000, which, to be fair, at the time was a bit of a pipe dream anyway, but nonetheless, that was our budget. And that was a budget that we had personally set to where we wanted to spend in our affordability from a personal standpoint. Not necessarily our affordability in terms of our means to pay a mortgage or our means to purchase. What we ended up doing was buying a property for $753,000. Now, we didn't overpay by $100,000. We didn't overpay for what we purchased. We bought well, but we went into a cul-de-sac. We went closer to schools, closer to shops, closer to amenities. We had a slightly larger lot, again, for a growing family. All of those kinds of things emotionally became a little bit more important. And what that really meant that if we were just searching for property based purely on price, we would have not looked at some of these other homes we ended up looking at. And again, being in real estate, you're able to sort of broaden your horizons a little bit. But buyers as well are giving a criteria to their listing agent or searching themselves based on that criteria and based on that logical budget for a home. And sometimes their means, unbeknownst to even their their buyer's agent helping them with the purchase, or even unbeknownst to them, the right property is out there in that range or potentially above it. So what auction looks to do is not impede someone's opinion of value, but rather expose the property to as many people as we possibly can. Now, naturally, that is beneficial, of course, for the seller. We make no apologies for that. The more interest we have, the more understanding of who might be the best buyer for the property. But also, we do not want to give a false impression or be the gatekeeper to a property's value when honestly, we do not know the home's value. And with the greatest amount of respect for our sellers, neither do they. As you know, buyers end up deciding what a home is worth, at least to them, and in turn, giving us a picture around the marketplace. And so I want to sort of give you an understanding of what the auction process is and why that interaction is really, really important. With the Harcourts auction process, there are a couple of key things to bear in mind. Number one is that we are a non-distressed real estate company. We do not auction for closed properties or in financial distress at all. It might be an ugly duckling, so distressed aesthetically, but financially speaking, it will be an equity sale. And so there is no necessity to sell for our sellers. And we do not conduct auctions without a reserve price. As I mentioned to you, the auction process within Harcourts is simply another approach for us to understand the market value. So instead of us guessing a listing price for the property, albeit potentially quite an accurate guess, or instead of us just listing the home at whatever our sellers want to sell the property for and us being wrong, having long days on market, price reductions, and just not getting anywhere and being quite frustrated, we instead oftentimes market the property as an auction. In doing so, we have a set auction date. And really all I want you to look at that as initially is a date by which we hope to be sold on or before, and we sell a good portion of our properties prior to the actual auction itself. We want that to be an encouraging time frame for you to come through and have a look at the property, and first and foremost, let us know if you like it. Let us know if you want to purchase the property, if your client has interest in the home. We can then decide on price and your client's interest at that time. But sometimes traditionally, by putting a price out there, a buyer's interest is purely based on that price, or the negotiation of value is predetermined, or there is an understanding of what their intentions are before they even decide if it's the right property for them. And so we want buyers to explore the property and let us know if they like the home. That's one pillar of the auction process, is our live auction date. As I mentioned, we don't do distressed property, they're all equity sales. And so our sellers do have what's called a non-disclosed reserve price. It's probably quite self-explanatory. And that is a private reserve that the seller would nominate that they would like to sell the property. And I must be really honest with you guys, sometimes that reserve price can be a little bit ambitious. Sometimes that reserve price can be quite low and the seller's pure minimum level that they would accept. I do want you to know that regardless of whether we hit or exceed that reserve price, the sellers are under no obligation to sell or accept any offer, even if it comes higher than that level. But that reserve price is put in place with reason. It's put in place with certain motivation within that certain time frame of auction that the sellers want to hear from the market, and they want to make a decision. Our job, being myself and Taj as the broker and as the listing agent, are to understand what the market is, educate our seller to where the market is, and ensure that they are in a position to accept that market should they want to sell on or before that auction timeframe. We're able to do that quite effectively given the amount of interest that we get and given your feedback. Your feedback, your offers, your interest is vital, not just for helping us get the seller to a position of accepting an offer, but also for the consideration of your client's interest for the property and the seriousness that we put on that when we discuss that with the seller as well. Traditionally, I think that there can be a bit of a lazy approach in real estate whereby a buyer and a buyer's agent present an offer to the listing agent. The listing agent simply forwards that email onto the seller and says, hey, here's our first offer. Let me know what you think. The seller naturally comes back and says, no, I don't want to take it. And one of two things happen. We either reject your offer or we send you a counter offer at a lower position. But there is very little value that's added or understanding of one another during that time frame. Instead of picking up the phone, and again, present company excluded from this because you're all premium operators, no doubt about it, but rarely do we pick up the phone and speak to the agents, speak to the buyers, just have a conversation around, hey guys, what are you looking to purchase? Help me understand your offer and help me understand the properties you've looked at or your budgeting that's helped you determine this particular value so that I can best articulate that to the seller. And let me articulate to you the seller's position and sort of what they're thinking and why. And we very rarely actually have a productive interaction other than, hey, here's my client's offer. Well, hey, here's my seller's position. We can get it done or we can't get it done, end of story. And so I think that there's a great opportunity missed there for us to offer a better service, not only for our clients, but offer a better service to one another as agents within the community around what we have to sell, who you have buying, and how we can help each other out in getting that deal done. There are countless times, I can't tell you how many, where a buyer's offer has been accepted well below that reserve price, well below it. And I can't tell you how many times a buyer's initial offer has been accepted, but maybe not just straight away. Maybe it's taken 2 or 3 weeks possibly for that process to play out, for the seller to understand where the value is, for the seller to understand where that market articulation is in terms of value, and for their motivation to sort of set in as well. Obviously, this process is about navigating our seller to an outcome. And if your client is the best buyer for the property, then we want to help that outcome come together. The third element of the auction process is, well, how is the property actually marketed? And the price point that's listed with an auction is that of a bidding to start from price. And again, that might be somewhat self-explanatory, but that bidding to start from price is effectively the level whereby we would like to entertain offers above and beyond. We would like to hear from your client's interest above that level. So let me just put an example in place. Let's say that we have a property where the reserve price is $500,000. Irrespective of comps, irrespective of value, irrespective of anything else, let's just say that's the non-disclosed reserve. Now, at the time, you won't know that. But what we might have is a bidding to start from price of, say, $450,000. Below that reserve, with intention below where the value might sit, in order for us to understand what your client's offer might be and where the market might actually sit, whether that's 450, whether someone comes through at 460 or 470, our job is to understand what the buyers are willing to pay, communicate that to the seller, and see if they are then in a position to accept whatever that looks like as well. The auction process is very efficient and very effective at getting the interest to articulate to the seller irrefutable data to get them in a position to accept the market value when it turns up. There are situations, undoubtedly, just like there are traditionally where we sell properties over ask or over that reserve price, where you have multiple buyers that really want a unique piece of property and do purchase accordingly. And then there are situations where the market simply isn't turning up to the seller's desired position, or possibly even to where we, as educated comparable providers, thought the value might actually end up, and the property is sold below that particular figure. Our job is to give the seller the information and allow them to make an informative decision with peace of mind. So again, the auction process is simply an approach for us to market a home. It's an approach with regards to the method and strategy we use to market a property. And it is by all means very, very engaging and very buyer friendly. There are a few other things from an auction standpoint that we do to give you that encouragement and to try to provide as much transparency as possible. We do all of our disclosures for a property up front. Now, they're statutory disclosures that you might ordinarily do when we're under contract, when we have offer and acceptance prior to closing through the escrow period. We do all of those up front. We do a home inspection up front, which is a third-party provider with non-bias. You are welcome to do your own, but we provide the home inspection report for you. We provide a termite report for you. We provide the seller disclosures and the agent disclosures all ahead of time so that you and your client can go through and understand exactly what you're purchasing. You can have the health check of the property, if you will, up front, and then determine based on that where you see value, or if there was concern about a property or work that your client wanted to do on the property, we can provide an understanding to that or the condition of the home itself, good, bad, or otherwise. And whether that work is done and handed over cleanly for you, or whether that is for your buyers, owners to take on, that is part of the negotiation. But the information, regardless, is given up front. So what we have effectively is we have a process which gives you the documents on the property, a health check on the home. It gives you an opportunity to tell us where you see the value and an opportunity for the market to educate the seller without us mispricing a home and without your client missing out on the property because we guessed on price. You or we or your client or our seller guessed wrong on price. It removes that unknown straight away. And it also gives you the opportunity to purchase pre-auction with an offer beforehand, which we encourage. But it also then gives you the opportunity to see transparently come auction day where the bids are, who is interested, who is bidding in terms of how many buyers and what price point they are willing to offer. So you have social proof and social justification around how much interest is in the property and what price point the interest is in the property. You and your client can then make a determination if you have interest at or above that level, or if in fact you don't, in which case, no problem, you can continue your search elsewhere. That, in some brief summary over a 20-minute pitch, if you will, is a bit about our auction process, what it is, how it's made up, and how we look to approach some of those outcomes. At this moment, I'll just take a quick minute to pause, catch my breath, but see if anyone did have any questions regarding that at all, both in terms of process, in terms of market, in terms of your own individual business, that Taj or myself might help answer for you.
Yeah.
Good morning. Doug, is it?
Hey, how are you?
Good afternoon, rather. Sorry.
It's all good. So just a couple of questions. If we're seeing my company and Taj's company do a lot of business together. So I just want to understand, when we see a property listed, for example, what's the price that's in multi-list? What's the workaround there? What are we actually looking at?
Yeah, what you'll be looking at in the multiple listing service is the bidding to start from price. So when the property is uploaded into the MLS, it will have certain verbiage and certain syndication such that you'll know very clearly that it is an auction. Such as our bidding to start from price is X, non-distressed auction. Here is our auction date. We have a non-disclosed reserve. Here are the documents, the link to the documents, etc. All of that is provided, some of which in the public remarks and certainly much more so in the private remarks. But the price that you will see, to answer your question, Doug, is the bidding to start from price. Okay. Now, again, I do want to say if your clients have interest at, or even in some cases below that starting price, I don't want to discourage your interest at all. Again, I must put my hand up. We've sold properties even below starting prices in some situations, either because it was wrong and we were educated on that, because the seller's motivation was such, or because the property's condition was such that it wasn't achieving a certain price point. So the bidding to start from price, we hope, is irrelevant to value. Our intention around that starting price is truly for it to be a foundation level for us to understand value above that, whether it's from offers beforehand or again, whether it's bidding come auction day. But we hope it's not an inhibitor or too close to where the perceived value might be, so that we can then clearly show that to the seller and educate them around that. But the price you will see is the starting price. Our reserve, again, is non-disclosed. With that said, though, we do sometimes have a situation where a property was listed traditionally, which then converts to an auction. Same intentions around that transition, by the way, but you'll have an understanding, given the traditional price, where the seller's expectations may have been, but equally where they have failed to sell the property. And so we're here to establish between these two numbers whereabouts something reasonable might actually sit from the marketplace. Equally, you might have an auction campaign starting out, but then converts to a traditional listing, whereby we were educated from the market to a point. The seller wasn't in a position to accept that potential interest, but they understand where the market is. And so we come out and try to sharply position the property with respect to where both the seller's intentions are, but also with regards to where the market had told us they also had interest. See if there's a gap to be bridged.
So you have your bid to start price. So what someone writes an offer on that, are you negotiating up until the time of the actual auction itself to educate the buyers who are writing offers on their properties? That's what I'd want to know. Are you responding to deadlines, for example? Are you responding to, we want to hear back from you by Friday at 3 p.m. Is it even worth putting that language in the contract? Are you going to pay any attention to that? Yeah. Are they more or less in a holding pattern in a right of first refusal? Until
questions.
Just trying to figure it out just from a consumer standpoint and how I can express this to the agents I work with.
Definitely. No, wonderful questions there. And there's quite a few laid in there. So I'll do my best to backtrack and answer those. And if I miss any, please let me know. But there's some great questions there. In terms of responses, absolutely you will get a response from us, no doubt about it, at the very longest within a 24-hour period of time. Whether that's from me, whether that's from Taj or a member of the team, whomever might be representing the deal, yes, you'll get a response from us. Will that response necessarily be, hey, your offer is 400, we'll take 450, and we actually, maybe not. Will it be a written counter offer? Maybe not. But you will get a response, and it will be a productive conversation around, hey, we wanted to let you know this is the environment by which we're looking at the moment. This is the situation that we are in. Help us understand a bit more about the situation your client is in, and let's see if we can take this conversation further to getting a deal. And again, if there is little things like, hey, we've got interest whereby we want to work on closing timeframes, or we want to work on deposit, or we're missing pre-approval, little things like that, that's easy to be very direct around. If we're close on price and there's a very real conversation there, again, we want to be very direct about that. And we want to be very honest with all the conversations we're having. But nonetheless, without the seller's express permission, I can't tell you the seller's non-disclosed reserve. Mind you, and with respect to the traditional process, we are not obligated as an industry, by the way, to counter every traditional offer either. It's actually down to the seller's request or permission granted in order to do so. Also, even to reject an offer is, again, this group, all highly educated agents, so I don't need to repeat any of that. All we need to do is furnish the seller. So I can guarantee you, number one, you will get a response from us. Number two, the seller will be furnished with your offer, no matter where the offer is, high, low, good, bad, clean, dirty, anything like that. It will be presented. You will hear back from us. In terms of the process through to auction day and to your deadlines. Deadlines sometimes are put in place just because you guys want to hear back from us and you want to have a deadline. I appreciate that. There's no harm in doing that whatsoever. And we want to respond to you in a timely fashion. Sometimes the deadlines are a little bit more serious in that, hey guys, we need to know because of very real reasons that are going to impact our decision further, whether we even are able to purchase or want to purchase. So in some cases, depending on the environment we have, which we will articulate to you, we will try to respond accordingly in that deadline, but also we might be heading towards auction day, by which we'll be telling you, hey guys, we appreciate your deadline expires on Friday at 5 p.m. Our auction is in fact next week. This is what's going on. This is where you sit in what's going on. Based on all of that, at the moment, we're heading through to auction. If you wanted to try to stop that, or if we could work on that, this is what we might need to explore. So again, all of those conversations definitely will be had. Taj, myself, or whomever is involved, no doubt about that. We are not interested in simply just getting your interest, holding it for the sake of pawn in a chess match. We really want to determine who the best buyer is for the property and clearly articulate that to the seller. One thing this process is very good at is understanding, and again, this is the same for any real estate dealers you'll all appreciate, is how long a buyer has been in the market. What have they missed out on? Where their pre-approvals, financial abilities, and what's their mindset and motivation? Because sometimes when we launch a property, both auction or traditional, it's, sometimes you get a great offer day one and the seller's just not there to sell the property just yet because they are waiting to see what happens, But we are very conscious of, it's not just how long we have been on the market, but it's how long the buyer has been in the market that is important. Because sometimes you can look a gift horse in the mouth and then sort of move away from that, and you don't recover from that price point. So we are very, very conscious of responding and engaging with offers straight away. And we're very mindful as well, with the greatest amount of respect, that when we advertise a starting price, people come through and they think, great, we'll start near to that level. That's, of course, fair enough. That's your prerogative and we welcome that. But it's not always the ending price, whether that's northward negotiations or whether it's the seller coming and compensating on their level as well. And so we want to make sure that we really do understand that and we're responding to that. And we're not dismissive of any offer at any time. Was that some of your question answered?
Yeah, that's great. And I got one more for you, if you don't mind. Do you have any metric on, I know these guys are advertising and utilizing all the tools that are available to them and their clients to get their properties listed and get them out there. Are you doing anything additional that Taj and Harcourt would be able to do on their own through their various SEOs and feeds? And is there a metric on the word auction, actually seeing how many more people that drives to market because that language is inserted?
Yes. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Both good questions. The word auction, yes, surveys have been done. 90% of people that were surveyed, 90% of the statistics, or the 90% of the statistic that we have, would explore purchasing an auction first before exploring traditional or buying a traditional property. And there are a number of reasons for that. And as you will probably all appreciate, is that the word auction in and of itself provides a bit of motivation. There is the question of, I wonder if I can get a deal. There is the question of, I wonder what's wrong with it. And there is the time frame of, these guys want to be sold on or before the next 2, 3, or 4 weeks. And if you were to think, if we had a property that was, let's just say we were in a community or a street where everything, a cookie cutter community, which may not be quite as prevalent in Lincoln City as where I live, but let's just say we had very similar homes and there were 3 homes on the market, all listed at very similar price points. And then we came on the market as an auction. That auction is likely to get more traffic than the other 3 individual homes because of that motivation, because of that deadline, because of the perception of getting a deal, and because we don't have the inhibitor of a price point. Our home, the seller might be wanting too much money for it, But if we're able to get the traffic through, we have a much better chance of getting them into a reasonable price, as opposed to listing it at roughly the same price points or even higher and getting either no one or 25% of that market through the property. So it makes sense from a marketing standpoint there. And again, we make no apologies for that. We're here to sell property, and it's a very effective process in doing that. But it's effective because of how engaging and friendly it is to the buyers. I forgot your first question. Sorry, Doug.
I probably forgot it by now too, but I think you covered most of it for me. And the other thing I'm trying to think about how we can help our clients and to have a resource in town that I can fall back on.
I remembered it, by the way.
Are there instances where, let's say, we have something that's just been sitting, and my agent is maybe in jeopardy of losing this home? Like, this listing just has, we've worked it, we've marketed it, open houses up and down, nothing's going on. Can I approach Taj and say, hey, rather than we get booted out of this deal completely, we've got great pictures, we've got XYZ, can you help us out with this? Can we utilize your services and compensate you at some sort of referral rate to do what you do?
Yeah, and I've remembered that other question. So to answer your question there very directly and bluntly, yes, absolutely. As you all know, and the reason that you're here is Taj is a giving and friendly character. And so yes, a partnership with Taj is welcomed if there's circumstances that we can help you out and vice versa, and continue that within the community. Again, we don't look at ourselves as a brand or as individuals such that we have competitors. We look at it such that, hey, we're all in this together. We have great clientele. You have great clientele. Let's do some great business. I don't know why sometimes we're a little bit closed-minded in that regard, and present company, again, very much excluded from that comment. Your question before was, does Harcourts or Harcourts Auctions have anything else exclusive in terms of marketing or anything special that's done in addition to what you might ordinarily have? The answer to that question is yes, but it is purely a layer on top of sort of the backbone marketing. Whether we list an auction or whether we list a property as a traditional listing, Taj's job is exactly the same: to market it and expose the property to as many people as we can, both in the agent community and just purely buyers, within his database or outside of it through the MLS, everything and all. So whether we list traditionally, whether we list auction, we want to expose it to most people. We want to get the best price. We want to do so in a short time. We want to provide the best service. Those things don't change. From an auction standpoint, naturally, auction gives a little bit more to it. We have our own auction website where all of our auctions are, which is harcourtsauctions.com, very simple one. And you can go on there at any time, by the way, we encourage it. But that property has its own unique URL. That's where all the documents and disclosures are housed for you to be able to peruse, download, review, go through everything, ask questions, be comfortable, be concerned, let us know. Also, all of our registration paperwork and details are as well. So you can become familiar and comfortable again with all of those aspects. And there's also the paperwork there for any variations of terms, if you wanted specific contingencies, so on and so forth. Sometimes people think that auction is either distressed, or it must be a cash, or it must be an as-is purchase. None of those things are true. You also sometimes think that there is a buyer premium and a cost to engage. None of those things are true. We do not charge buyer premiums. We do not do distressed property. We do disclose absolutely everything. And it's really engaging in that capacity. And we do partnerships. But that auction website does get traffic, both organic, but also most of the traffic for, again, this link is in the private remarks of our listing on the MLS, for example. And so interest that's been from one source or through the property, through Taj, is then typically visiting the site. So it's a secondary step. We do, of course, do social media marketing, and we, of course, do have a database from an auction company directly. So that is all true still. And we do have our online bidding room where all of our auctions come auction day are hosted. They're done online, and buyers can bid and transact from anywhere in the world for properties all over the place as well. For example, I'm sitting in this auction room, by the way, and I'm in California, and you guys are in Oregon. So that is another layer where we get viewership or engagement directly. Again, they are nice things to have on top, and sellers often ask us, what extra marketing do you do as an auction versus traditional? And the very honest answer, as I expose ourselves in a listing conversation for a moment, is we do have nice things, but they do not replace the backbone marketing that you would expect anyway, because our job, auction or traditional, remains the same. So yes and no is the answer to that question.
Thank you.
I talk a lot, guys. I'm sure you can figure out I'm an auctioneer. Any other questions?
I had from our first auction that we held in Lincoln City, I just kind of jotted down some of the questions that I was getting from some agents. So I'll throw those out to you, Jason.
Please.
You respond as you see fit here. One I got from quite a few agents was, okay, my buyer's interested. They don't want to write an offer. How do they register?
Yeah, really good question. So you will, I hope, putting the spotlight back on Taj here for a second as I answer his question the very, very long way. But when you engage with us, we want to make your purchasing decisions really easy. Whether or not you want to buy it or you don't want to buy it, we want that to be easy. Because if you don't want to buy it, great, no harm, no foul. Don't buy it. We need to know that as well. But if you do want to buy it, we want to make that easy. And so we just want to understand, would you like to buy it before auction by submitting an offer? But bearing in mind that more often than not, to stop the auction, we need an auction stopping offer. We need something that's going to be compelling in order to stop the momentum. But again, time frame might be suitable to your buyer to do that. Desire to actually secure it and not compete for the property might be such to do that. Or you might just want to throw your hat in the ring, all of which no problem at all. Because what might be a good buy for you might be a great sale for the seller. You know, you guys might think you're getting a great deal. The seller thinks they've sold it for a great price. Hey, happy days. I've got myself into a mental cul-de-sac. Sorry. What was the question, Taj?
Just the registration process.
Registration process. Thanks, mate. Sorry. So whether you want to buy beforehand, we just want to ask that question. Do you want to write an offer or would you rather register to bid? And so the question of, well, how do I register to bid? Again, really simple. We have I think it's a 3-minute video, which is a video guided walkthrough of our site and how to register, in walking you through that actual paperwork and what that paperwork is. Daniel, if you have that handy, I might get you to put that into the chat. If not, let me know and I can find it after this. But I'll get Daniel to put that video walkthrough. It's just on YouTube. But I'll get him to put that into the chat here so that you can save that or view that and have that for your own reference point. Dan, by the way, works in our team. Hi, Dan. Thanks for joining. The other aspect there is that that link through to our website really is everything. Once you go there, it's really quite easy in terms of seeing the documents for downloaded disclosure. You can even write an offer on our website. It is not on a binding contract. It's more an articulation of intent to purchase. So we ask, what would you offer? What would your deposit be? What would your time frame be? Would there be any contingencies? You know, it's a pretty simple tick and flick type offer, and it sends us a notification that, hey, you would like to submit an offer and this is what it would look like and we can work together. Most of the time that is presented from a buyer versus an agent. Of course, they are normally presenting something on an actual contract. You also, of course, have the bidding section there in order to register to bid. Now, to Taj's question, in viewing that, there are a number of options where the buyer themselves and directly can actually just complete the registration, or you as the representing agent can send that registration, can send that paperwork, or can send the link to the site to your client as well. We have no interest in taking your clients, guys. Obviously that's naturally illegal, but secondly, we've got no interest in that. Again, we want to be as inclusive as possible. From an auction standpoint, me personally, Taj is my client. I don't represent buyers or sellers directly whatsoever. I work with them indirectly, naturally, but Taj represents the seller, and you as the buying community or their agent and so on and so forth represent the buyer. We have no interest in that whatsoever. So in sending that link to your client, you can obviously do that and sending them through the video walkthrough that Dan sometimes will find, hopefully soon. The other thing with regards to the registering and offers is one or the other is not exclusive to each other. You can submit an offer and still register, and you can register and still submit an offer. And you can register and intend to bid on auction day, and we might call you and say, hey, we've actually got a really compelling offer. You've registered. Did you want to submit, or did you want us to consider this offer more seriously? No, let's submit. Again, we are very communicative, and we're very proactive in terms of approaching you and keeping, all known interests very much in the loop with all of those things. So how do you register? On that site, the video walkthrough hopefully is coming from Dan. And there you go. Thanks, buddy. Right on time. Third time's the charm. So you'll be able to see that and understand that. If you have difficulty registering, or if you're unsure about anything, call Taj, call myself. All of our details will be there through the listing. And we will help you. Again, my job specifically is to help there. I do not have a horse in the race. If Taj sells the property, great. He might list an auction again. That's good for me. But if he doesn't, that's Taj's client. It's not my seller. So if you have questions about how do I do things, or should I do that, or whatever, I don't have a horse in the race. I don't represent a seller. I don't represent a buyer. I facilitate and run an auction process. I facilitate the event. I facilitate the approach, and I facilitate the negotiation. Pure and simple. So feel free to ask any questions through the process, or any concerns, or how do I do this, or how do I do that? And I'll be able to help you through all of that.
The one other question I got quite a bit, and it ties in a little bit to the first question there, is if a buyer doesn't present an offer before auction, but they registered a bid and they end up being the winning bidder, what happens next was the question I got quite a bit. So it's like, do we move forward without the Oregon real estate forms, or do we put it on real estate forms? That was the question I kept getting. And how's the process look for a winning bidder who didn't write an offer before auction day? Perfect.
So the way in which we transact real estate, guys, is exactly the same. The listing agreement is the listing agreement. The purchase contract is the purchase contract. The escrow period is the escrow period. The closing, the contingencies, or maybe lack thereof, etc. They're all per normal. Again, and I use the term approach. Our approach with how we are selling the property, or how we're engaging with the market, or how we're educating the seller is just slightly different to that of a traditional sale. So should you submit an offer before auction, that offer is on a normal, standard, Oregon, your local area purchase contract. Should we accept that? We accept that as you would expect it to be, with the appropriate paperwork, etc. And we open escrow and off we go. Done. Should we get to auction and we have bidding on auction day, the registration is really permission to participate. I want to participate. These are the terms I'll be participating under. Should I be a successful purchaser, I agree that I'm going to commit to signing off on that paperwork. But it's your paperwork that would then be the next step. You've bid at auction, you've secured the property, you've won, you've got the property, we've agreed, we've sold the home, we now have offer and acceptance, and we now get contracts drawn up. That would be for the buyer's agent to send us the purchase agreement, okay? Sometimes if you have written an offer beforehand, it just hasn't been accepted, and then you bid at auction day and there is either an acceptance of that offer, or there's a slight change either in price or terms or time frame or whatever it might be. We sometimes might counter just to make it simple and quick. But more often than not, there is the new RPA, residential purchase agreement. Sorry, that might be a Californian term, but there's a new purchase agreement or an addendum to your original purchase agreement, just with it being updated. Then once that's all signed off, deposit is in, escrow, everything standard from there. But after you win at auction, purchase contracts must be drawn. That is the next step.
Perfect. I guess the one last question I got quite a bit was, let's say the auction's a great success with a lot of bids and the price really gets up there significantly higher than the bid to start from price. And there's a concern about the appraisal.
Yeah, great question. So we are really upfront with all of our conversations with our sellers, guys. And again, in my opinion, whatever happens tells you a lot. If you have a traditional home and no one's coming through and you've got no viewership online, you have a problem. No one's engaging with you, probably because of property or price. More often than not, price overcomes the property anyway. So, you've got a price problem. It's getting great engagement online, but no one's coming through the property. Well, hey, price is being engaged with, but something there is not speaking to one another in terms of your presentation of the property in relation to that price. If everyone's coming through the open house, but no one's writing offers, then something's happening at that open house and people are being turned away. Regardless, my point being is that whether you have nothing or you have everything, you have a lot of data to actually speak to and to educate a seller. And when I say educate, I don't mean it in a conditioning standpoint. I mean educating in terms of being informative to a seller to help them make a decision, okay? We condition and educate buyers and buyers agents just as much as we condition and educate our sellers, and even Taj and I educating each other as well. Information is information, pure and simple. Facts are facts. So we want to communicate. We want to communicate that. With regard to if you have a appraisal issue, we're very much on the front foot there as well with the seller around this is where a likely selling range is based on market. This is where a likely justifying range is based on market data. And this is what an appraiser is going to look at. We know what appraisers are going to look at. Taj has been in the industry and in Lincoln City for longer than most in real estate. And so we know what we are coming to expect. We know the situation. So if we do have an overcommitment, one of two things need to happen. And probably both simultaneously. Number one, to the seller, hey, we have an overcommitment. This is something we need to be aware of should we decide to move forward. The person that is not overcommitted or is more in line with where things make sense and make sense to close smoothly is here. Would you like to accept that? We want to be very upfront prior to accepting around what our concerns or challenges moving forward might be. Equally, though, we will come to you and we will say, hey, guys, we may or may not have an appraisal issue here. Should we want to make sure that you have the difference in terms of your liquidity as a buyer. Should there be a discrepancy? If we're accepting your offer, we're accepting your offer as it is today. And if there is an appraisal difference, we want to remove the contingency. Okay, if you guys can qualify and there is an appraisal difference and you have the cash, that will be on you. If you're not comfortable with that, okay, but then we might not be as comfortable to move forward with the risk of just entering escrow for the sake of not closing. So we might take another offer here that just might be the highest. Again, we want to be conversational, we want to be informative, we want to be very upfront, and we want to be proactive in the conversations we have. Auctions very, 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 very seldom fall out of escrow. Very, very rarely do we have a disagreement from offer and acceptance through to closing. Very rarely do we have a compensation. Very rarely do we have a request of repairs. Very rarely do we have any bullshit, excuse the French. The reason for that is because of the thoroughness ahead of time, because of the honesty, and because also we've got backup interest, so your buyers either perform or we perform elsewhere. And again, I make no apology for that. We're running a process to help sell property, not just help an individual buyer. Naturally, they go hand in hand. But if your buyer is not the best buyer for the property, that often becomes apparent. We go elsewhere, we pivot, no problem. But yes, that would be the conversations that would unfold. Sometimes you do, and we have had appraisal issues that go both ways, where we've gone back to the buyer and said, hey, look, your appraisal's come in short. We've spoken about it. You need to come up with the difference. They say, yep, no problem. And they'll do that. Sometimes we've had it on the other foot where, hey, we've had an appraisal issue. It was a surprise, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. We're going to have to either hold firm and lose the buyer, potentially, or we're going to have to be considerate of that reason, accept that we did a great job in selling the property, and maybe we need to give a little on where our end result is in order to make sure you sell and you close. They're just conversations in order to find out what makes the most sense at the time.
Perfect.
Any other questions there? Again, I realize that I have very long answers. I hope that's not too off-putting, but I just want to be able to give you guys an insight. And while we have the opportunity today, and Taj has got us all together, to give the information to know who you're dealing with, the circumstances that you're playing in, and our intentions as well. Our intentions are true, our intentions are honest, and we run it is a great process. Don't be put off by, oh, it's an auction, who knows what they want? Well, sometimes we don't. And so we need to understand that. And sometimes, by the way, we might take an auction with a really overpriced seller and we're taking it in order to educate them as well. Sometimes we think that we're going to get a really overwhelming response. So why would we just list it traditionally and possibly leave money on the table? Again, make no apologies for that. Auction helps us understand who the best buyer is.
Okay, appreciate it, man. I got a 3 o'clock, so I'm going to run, but excellent information. Taj, thanks for the invite. And nice to hear from you, Jason.
Lovely to meet you, Doug. I appreciate your attention, your attendance, and your engagement today as well.
Yeah.
With your questions. Look forward
Good
to
stuff. Take
keeping
care,
in touch.
guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who joined us for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If there are any other questions, guys, I welcome them. Otherwise, I don't want to sort of dump every little nuance on you. I think I've given a bit of an understanding around what an auction is, who we are, why we run them, how to interact with them, and as well as some common questions or objections and understanding information there. So if there's anything further or additional, please feel free to ask those either in the chat or directly or to Taj after this meeting as well. And we welcome that opportunity. Otherwise, guys, I think, I've taken up a lot of your time and I do appreciate it. Not at all undervalued.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, for spending the hour with us, giving us more information. And we did record this, so we'll make sure to get the recording link out to everybody and so that it can be shared with more agents in Lincoln County, Tillamook County. And then you guys can come directly to me with follow-up questions, or if you want to dive into stuff a lot deeper, I'm happy to do that on a one-on-one basis.
Cool. I think that's it then, guys. Thanks very much. Great to meet you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Taj. Thanks, Dan, as well. Cheers, mate. Bye.